Right, welcome to our final day of the 2021 NPSI National Conference and to our session, NPSI in Action, the NPSI Network. We are excited to have you here from folks we've been working with over the last year through our NPSI Network. Today's theme for the conference is Equity in Motion. We've been talking to you a lot over the last few days about the NPSI model and kind of the theory around what that looks like, some of the practice that folks are engaging in. And today we want to talk about what that looks like when districts really engage in the NPSI model and embrace that work. So 2 years ago, we had this great vision from NPSI about what would it look like if we could work with a set of districts who really took the NPSI model to heart, thought about leadership, thought about data strategy, thought about counseling and how they work together. And so a year ago, we were able to launch our first national network to select a set of districts who were excited and engaged and ready to dive into the work deeply. And so I think we launched this last June. We selected our 8 districts who are going to be in the NPSI network. So we have Baltimore City Public Schools, Denver Public Schools, Everett Public Schools in Washington, Fort Worth Independent School District, Indianapolis Public Schools, Michigan City Area Schools in Indiana, the New York City Department of Education, and the San Antonio Independent School District. These 8 districts raised their hand to embrace the NPSI model and to really engage deeply throughout a 2-year period to do this work. And hopefully actually we extend beyond 2 years. But we meet with representatives from these districts, teams from these districts every month to talk about their work in their district and talk about how they can push their partnerships and their relationships and their communication strategies deeper into leadership data and counseling, and how they can really embrace increasing outcomes for students in post-secondary success. And so our goals for the network is to, through these meetings and through these discussions and the coaching we do and the sharing we do among the districts, is to capture scalable and measurable post-secondary practices and tools that they are using to improve students' college and career success. And then we're going to share this. So we'll have our first white paper next fall, and then we'll have several every year to share what these 8 districts are doing, how they're transforming their work, and then how that can be done in other districts like them. We've intentionally have the largest urban districts in the country and then small 1 or 2 high school districts in the network. So we have a wide range of learning and sharing that can be shared to all sorts of districts across the country. Our network, this first network, is focused on 3 common indicators. We're focused on FAFSA completion, college enrollment, and college completion, because these are data points that can be third-party verified, which means every district can measure this, and we can have common definitions. We do go beyond these 3. Each district picks their important critical metrics that they're working on in addition to these 3, but these are the 3 that are common across all 8. And so as we do this work, we really do come back to this model that we've shared with you. All of our districts took an assessment at the beginning of the network to see where they were on data strategy, to see where they were on counselors and leaders, to see where they were around post-secondary leadership. And we've built priorities and plans around that work to help them move forward. Critical to this is that each district does have a team that they have identified that includes at least 1 director of college and career programs, at least 1 director of data strategy, and at least 1 director of school counselor engagement. I know we've had questions over the week around how important is it to have somebody in each of those categories, and it is critically important for your team that is working on this to have representatives from those 3 categories. All of our 8 districts do. And it's and they're meeting. They're doing the outer circle of our model. They're meeting and they're sharing accountability and they're communicating and they're building those relationships. And so I am just super excited to hear some of our districts talk about this work, what the last year has looked like, and where we're going for the future. So now I am going to turn it over to Venice Bradley Mitchell, who is NPSI's Director of School District Engagement, and who has been leading this network, doing all of the work to get this off the ground and keep it running.
Good morning, everyone. I am Venice Bradley Mitchell, Director of District Engagement, and it's so fun to be here with you today. NPSI is really dedicated to helping school districts attain post-secondary success through advancing the ideas of school districts into strategies that they can believe in and depend on. Our presenters today are going to share their reflections on their interactions with the NPSI network and how they're working to reach all students equitably. I'm so thrilled for you to meet the fantastic 4 of 8 of the school districts that make up our very first NPSI network. We have Aaron Garrett of Michigan City Area Schools, Samantha Haviland of Denver Public Schools, and we have Melanie Mack from New York City Department of Education, and kudos on the win today for Power of Hope. And we have Lalo Saetti from San Antonio Independent School District, and he's affectionately known as Lalo. So I'd like for you guys to, yes, great, welcome. Fantastic 4. Great. So I'm excited for you guys to share some of your reflections about your experience with the NPSI network today. It's really been my pleasure to work with all 8 school districts and all of your teams that we've been in touch with, and just working with. It's been great to watch you guys flourish. You guys have taken the homework in stride. Many of you have asked, like, we want homework. And it is really, it's really been awesome to watch you guys evolve. So here's the first question. What's the most rewarding about participating in the NPSI network?
So first of all, thank you to the NPSI team in general for just even putting this all on. We all would probably, I will speak for all of us, we appreciate what you guys have done and what you will continue to do for us. But I could probably go on for hours on what has been so rewarding. But the first thing that I just want to talk about specifically is we are a small district in Michigan City Area Schools, and part of the NPSI team where you have the largest in the country versus probably one of the smaller ones in the country as Michigan City. We'll say we're small, but we're mighty. So we'll start with that. But the one thing that we have all talked about and is one of the most rewarding things for us is that we are finally getting to engage in intentional conversations about where we lack as a district. And that is something that we started when we started working with the NPSI team several years ago, and being a part of the network, it's helped us to empower our school counselors, some of our district leaders, and just to be able to have true conversations about what we need to do and where we're going to move forward with. It's like literally yesterday, it was the same thing. We're sitting in this conference and we're having a meeting during our breakout sessions, and we were just talking about things that we need to do. And the NPSI network has been great with giving us insight and leadership and just guidance in some of the things that we as a district need to work on, what our successes are, and things that are still missing. So it's one of the amazing things about the network is that we get to have this conversation with not only the NPSI team, but also some of the other districts. So even though we're a small district, it's very neat and fabulous to actually sit and listen to some of these larger districts and understand that big city problems are the same problems that small cities are having, and vice versa. And so it's really cool to network with those districts, and the people on this call, I feel like they're already family members of mine. We know each other now. We've sat in meetings together and we've talked about some of the same exact problems that we've all had. And, we work through different solutions for those problems. We, shoot ideas off of each other. And it's something that in this day and age, there should be more of, to be honest. We all are on this for the same purpose, and that is to support our students, and our students come first. And the only way to do that is to think outside the box. And when you have all this wealth of knowledge in different districts, it's been great. And it's something that I think that without the NPSI team and the NPSI network, we wouldn't have. So it's been really cool, really neat. And I love it. And our counselors are getting a lot of this, and they're starting to stand up for themselves and become leaders in our district. And we look forward to what's to come.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, it's like we're becoming, I feel like you guys are like an extension of my family, right? Like I text message you, Lalo, on weekends, even though we're not supposed to, but when we need to, when you need to get a hold of us, or we need to get a hold of you, I just love how everybody is so flexible and we're all committed to the work. So it's great. Thanks, Aaron. All right, next question. How are you organizing around the NPSI 3 pillars? So NPSI our work is based on the foundation of the 3 pillars, which is leadership, data strategy, and engaging school counselors as leaders. So would love to hear how you guys are organizing around the NPSI 3 pillars.
And I'm happy to help with that. From Denver Public Schools, we've actually gotten very deep into the 3 pillars and have actually reorganized our central department so that we can really embrace the 3. And it's interesting looking through the 3 pillars, and specifically, I think we were a little surprised about what we learned about our systems when it comes to data. Because as a large school district, we have data for days. And in that, we weren't always looking at the right data. But Dr. Lalo, maybe you want to expand a little bit about how you are using the 3 pillars.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. And Lalo is connecting to audio. He lost power just a few minutes. But yes, so, yep.
Sorry, yeah, I just come back in as you were finishing, Samantha. I apologize, everybody. Laptop dies randomly if you don't plug it in. Anyway, question 2, right, Denise?
So how are you organizing around the 3 NPSI pillars of leadership, data strategy, and engaging school counselors as leaders?
Yeah, so we I think what I appreciate about my team is well, actually what I appreciate about you and the NPSI team is you forced us to look in the mirror and say, all right, when it comes to these 3 things, what are truly the gaps? Where are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And we quickly identified school counselor engagement as an area for growth. We knew that leadership was in an okay place, and we also knew that data was actually leadership was in a good place. Data was in an okay place, but counselors and counselor engagement was the area for growth. And so what we really started doing as a team was just this notion of collective impact. We really started talking about what is the area for mutual purpose. And if we think about school counselor engagement as the area for growth, then who needs to be in the room in this NPSI team to be able to talk through what are the different facets of what counselors do, the position just being so interdepartmental, right? They touch a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. And we really started to identify, first of all, what is our mutual purpose? Then we started to identify, based on that purpose, what are the actual measurable outcomes that we want to do? And you heard, if you were sitting on the conversation with Superintendent Pedro, he mentions a lot of data-driven sort of strategies, right? Like we look for these outcomes. And then of course, we looked at both what are our leadership in schools doing or not doing, and then what is our leadership in central office doing or not doing. One of the ways that NPSI has helped us shape our work with those 3 pillars is we actually thought about the people that needed to be in the room. So this for us goes beyond the data person, the counselor person, and the college career readiness person. We brought on the people that are in dual language. We brought on the people that are maybe supervising schools in academics, because we think a lot of this taps into a lot of different people. And then specifically with the counselor engagement piece, one of the things that we've actually done much more recently, because of just the mere fact that NPSI says we're going to meet and we're going to talk and we're going to have a guided conversation, and it allows us to actually have the conversation, because otherwise I don't know that we would actually schedule time for the conversation. And we have been able to, most of all, reshape the conversation around defining the role of the counselor. And so we've asked that question differently. So rather than saying what is a counselor's role, we're asking what are the counselor's measurable outcomes, and based on those outcomes, then we can talk about the role. Then we can define what a counselor should or should not do. And we think that that's partly why historically that area of growth for us, it's been so mysterious, and we haven't really dug down into it, because we've really been just asking, what do they do? And when you look at the Texas model, it just says counselors just do these things and they strive to be this way, but it doesn't specifically say they need to be driving these particular measurable outcomes. So we started gearing that way for that pillar, and it's helped the other pillars, right? Because now we know what kind of data and what kind of dashboards need to be present and accessible, what kind of training around that should we do, because we know the measurable outcomes that our counselors need to drive. And then, of course, does the leadership understand that now? So there's a set of training, there's a set of understanding to be able to get to those outcomes, so that our counselors keep doing what they have to do, but they also are given choice on how to do it, as long as they're driving these outcomes, and then we can train them on different aspects of that. So that's been really crucial for us. We've always talked about our counseling framework, if you will, as something that it's still iffy, that still needs to grow, that still needs to be better defined. And the work in the last year has been so significant, not just with defining that, but bringing people into the room who are saying, actually, we can help with some of that are not the typical counselor or advisor or the college and career readiness team. There's other folks in the room who believe in our kids as much as we do, and who think from their standpoint, they can also contribute to the conversation and contribute in their own ways. So that is just one of the more significant ways that we've used the 3 pillars.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. Lalo, you continue to bring people into the fold when you need to. You've said to me on several different occasions, like, oh, we got a new member of the team we're adding, or, our teams they're dynamic, they're changing. Let's add this person, let's add that person. So we appreciate you bringing everyone into the work who needs to have a seat at the table to move metrics for students. Kudos to you for that. All right, next question. So what is one change you've implemented from participating in the NPSI network?
I can take that question, and whoa, what a question, given that the NPSI network launched at the same time as a global pandemic. So I've really been thinking about this question. There's obvious things. I'm working from my home in Brooklyn right now, and I think there's an aspect of that in terms of like what hasn't changed for all of us as district leaders within the past year. But I think that given that our membership as New York City in the NPSI network has lined up with this time of COVID, I can't say enough of just how important in a time of such change and adaptation it is to have the focus structure. So much of what Lalo's saying and Samantha and Aaron are saying resonates for us in New York City. I have to shout out Venice and Kelly and Greg and Joyce and Amanda, the NPSI team, because they take a human-centered approach to this work, and they focus on the relationships, our relationships with them, and just the availability. Venice talks about the texts, and just have to acknowledge that in this past year that we've been members of the network, our students and families, it's obvious how much loss and how much trauma we've all experienced, our staff, from school staff to central staff, have experienced loss, have experienced really significant leadership transitions. We've been reassigned at different moments to support different aspects of reopening and shifting between remote and hybrid learning. We've experienced furlough due to citywide budget challenges. And that human-centered approach really means the world. And then the ability to reach out to San Antonio or Baltimore as we have, and be able to think through the challenges related to COVID. The change, all that to say, one of the changes that we've made since we've become network members is really at the intersection of the data and leadership pillars, and why the three pillars of NPSI are so intertwined. You may have met some of our team this week. We have three large central district level post-secondary readiness teams. My team in the Office of Post-Secondary Readiness, our team in the Division of Multilingual Learners, supporting post-secondary readiness specifically for multilingual learners, English language learners, and immigrant youth, and our post-secondary readiness team in our special education office. And this conference is the first time that all three of our teams are present here. And that's a testament to the work of NPSI to really push us to think about the district level post-secondary leadership team, right? And to Lalo's point, who needs to be in the room? And for us, it's right, it's been in the Zoom room for this past year, but who needs to be there? And how can that accelerate our work? So although we have made a number of changes in the past year due to COVID, I want to talk a little bit about how us being more intentional about our district level post-secondary leadership team and bringing together our three teams across our divisions has helped us really accelerate our data strategy and specifically. Our challenge as a central team during this past year has been, how do we communicate really clear and simple messages to leaders across the system, to advocates, and to the change makers at the school level, so that we keep students' post-secondary plans top of mind during the crisis, when there are just so many different needs that are vying for the attention of our school staff, our central staff, our leaders. And we really had to reckon with whether the data that we had and what we valued most during this COVID period, that if the data was reflecting our values. I'm sure for no matter which district you're representing, needing to communicate the work clearly so that it lands for all of your stakeholders is something that probably resonates. For us, we have to reach over 500 high schools. They support 65,000 to 70,000 seniors each year, 9 borough offices to support the 500 schools, 33 superintendents, and 8 executive superintendents. So when you're thinking about this work staying top of mind during COVID, we had to be really clear and thoughtful, intentional about what mattered most. And what mattered most to us was that post-secondary planning and support needed to be personalized throughout COVID. I'm preaching to the choir. We know that this always needs to be the case, but particularly when our system has been remote, and our high schools have been remote for the majority of the past year. Arnie Duncan earlier was talking about a relationship with a caring adult changes lives, and that was the message that we really doubled down on. But the problem that we had was that our metrics that we regularly communicated out to our schools did not necessarily lift that up or help us hold ourselves accountable as a system to our students. And more importantly, the data we had, whether it was college application or FAFSA completion data, it was not inclusive enough of all of our pathways that our students were taking, and wasn't holding us accountable to our undocumented students who aren't visible in the FAFSA data, or to our students who are pursuing just different career training or career pathways. The college application data was not enough to show us or help us hold ourselves accountable to providing personalized support. So we had to really think about the new data that to spur engagement and to send this clear message across our enormous system. So to really double down and hold ourselves accountable to personalization through COVID, we launched a STARS post-secondary tracker. So STARS is our academic management system that all 500 of our high schools use. We launched a new component of this data system, and we began to track two things for the first time ever across our 500 plus schools. One-to-one post-secondary planning conferences. So, you know, Lala was talking a little bit about counselor practice and the things that, you know, some of the key metrics for counselor practice. We wanted to lift up the importance of these one-to-one conversations with students. And then we did, for the first time ever, more proactive monitoring of our students' post-secondary plans in the semester leading up to graduation. Whereas previously the paradigm citywide was you enter the post-secondary plan at the time of graduation. For the class of 2020, we would have been doing them a tremendous disservice to wait until June or August when they were graduating, you know, at the height of the pandemic. So that, coupled with our leadership strategy, we had to start thinking about how we were sharing these data points more broadly. We also thought of encountered some other data points, like how many of our schools were building in post-secondary planning into their school day schedules during remote learning, given remote learning created so many programmatic challenges. Were counseling supports, advisory supports, specific time for post-secondary planning showing up in student schedules, and how do we make sure that that's something that we communicated across our schools, our support offices, our superintendent's teams, and did all of our schools continue to have dedicated college and career planning staff, and making sure that data point was lifted up, because in a time of scarcity of resources, we had to make sure that one of the impacts of COVID that we were tending to was any impact on the staffing to provide that personalized support. And then we had to also start tracking the impact of our grading policy. We made a decision as a system that students would not receive failing grades during the pandemic, and instead they received a grade of NX, or incomplete with some parameters. This clearly has implications for graduation, for post-secondary admissions, and the transition. And so this was also a data point that we needed to make sure that we started lifting up and contextualizing within post-secondary planning. So a few things concretely that we did that have come from NPSI strategies are we finally created a data calendar that across our stakeholders that we needed to communicate to across the system. We knew when and which data points would be shared. We shifted from our office's responsibility primarily to report to schools and make sure schools had the data they need, to 4 other stakeholder groups. Were we giving superintendents and executive superintendents the data they needed? Were we giving our other support offices that work with schools in terms of academic policy and other facets of their work? Were we making sure they had the data that they could connect? And then we also had to move from some of our data that came from our city college system through our data sharing agreement, or from FAFSA, which we would share out as raw data for progress monitoring, and we needed to make more meaningful cuts. That data needed to be available with cuts for our English language learners, for our students with disabilities, our students in temporary housing. And then for each of those stakeholders, the data that a school staff member needs to have, or a counselor needs to have, is often different than perhaps what the principal needs to have, or the superintendent, or the executive and superintendent. And so over this past year in the network, we've been rapidly iterating on how do we differentiate this data by stakeholder. And so if there are 7 key data points perhaps that a counselor is tending to, right? We just within the workload and understanding of the roles of leaders across the system, that may translate to 4 key data points for principals, 2 for a superintendent, and maybe really doubling down on 1 or 2 metrics for our executive superintendent and chancellor. So that just kind of brings us back to the overarching NPSI supports through all of this, right? Just really helping us think through who were the folks that needed to be in the room. And for us, Lalo, you talking about the meeting times and really forcing us to make sure that we were meeting regularly, accountability just really helped us do the work that we wanted to do. It helped us accelerate the data that we were making available, and the audience that we were making it available to, and just made us really think about the single message across our teams and across our district that that was most essential.
That's fantastic, Melanie. It's so awesome to work with you and the entire team. You guys always, you never disappoint us. When we give a homework assignment, you guys, as all 8 of you do, you just knock it out of the park. All right, next question. What surprised you most about implementing the NPSI model? Hand that over to you, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of what my peers are saying resonates. And when it comes to this question about what surprised us, when we did the assessment, I don't think that we were surprised. We're strong in our leadership and our vision. We're strong in our school counseling. But as I had mentioned, we have data for days. It's just not always the right data. Melanie, to your point, it's not cut the way that we need it to be, and it's not looked at as frequently as it should be. And I think the pandemic is part of that. I think the pandemic, and when it comes to implementing the NPSI model, has really challenged us to think very differently about how we're doing things. And I don't know that I should be surprised about that, but then I was surprised by a national pandemic. Didn't see that one coming. So thanks 2020 for throwing that one. In that, like I said, we have so much data, but it's just not always the right data. And our stakeholders, what we thought was just our small group of stakeholders, we have added so much too, and people are on board and excited about it. So we have some of our community partners are in attendance today, the Denver Education Attainment Network, as we're looking at building out college pathways with our local college providers and making sure that we're offering courses that align to their degree plans so that our students don't just get random advising and guidance, right? Helping us with that college completion, college matriculation. We created a program this year for central staff members from any and all departments to work with our graduating high school students that have struggled the most. We call it post-secondary mentors. And our mentors were assigned students with the hopes that we would align the needs with the skills, and have gotten really great feedback on that. And it's anywhere from how are you doing with your grades to on track to graduate, credit recovery, to resumes. And, I was reading a feedback about someone was interested in a welding program. Where do I go get a welding program? And it's my finance department guy is Googling these post-secondary pathways to have a real honest truth, like conversation. And so when thinking about that, it's really about bringing the whole community together to understand that it's not just a department that is responsible for the career success and the college success of our students, but it's truly all of us. It is everyone. And if, in DPS, we say, if you don't understand that you're working for the students, then you might need to find a different job. Our job is for the students, right? And in that, as adults do, we make adult problems. And so we've been working to refine our communication strategies, working to refine our data. And a part of that is that we are still, as a culture, working on getting into the space of looking at our data with curiosity and not with judgment. Where the data points, yes, I knew, Denise, I knew you would love that because you drive that home every time we meet. The data points, especially in pandemic, my FAFSA numbers are not where my goal written into my evaluation says that they should be. And I need to think about FAFSA completion and administration of FAFSA differently. We can't do large parent events or things like that right now, right? So what does that look like? Identifying which data points are we solid on and which ones do we need to grow on? And there is also a constant push to be better. There's an internal competition about how many concurrent enrollment classes are you offering, and how many college applications. We have some schools that like to say 100% of students have been accepted to college, which is accurate, but that doesn't mean that that's what that post-secondary goal is for that student, right? And so that's a kind of a cheap data point at some levels. We do ICAP, which is the individual career and academic plans. And that has been around for a decade and we're still not fully doing it well. So looking at how we creatively think about that, which has led us down a virtual pathway and inviting all of our ninth graders into a Schoology group to complete ICAP together, which the comments are just magical with those students. But there was a lot, I think, that surprised us during the 2020 school year. And I have to say, part of being in this network helps to keep me sane, because I recognize that, again, Erin, to your point, it's not just Denver Public Schools, it's a national problem that your kids in Michigan City are my kids in Denver Public Schools, and we all need to try to figure this out together. And Sam Havlin doesn't have all the answers, so I'm looking for all the answers out of the brilliant things that the network shines lights on. So plenty of things that I'm surprised about, lots of exciting work. We just started really tracking, and we're gonna just start communicating out our work-based learning data. Our students that are internships and mentorships and apprenticeships, and how that aligns to their post-secondary pathway, and sharing that data regularly with schools. And also we are taking on a new effort to share those post-secondary plans with the colleges that our students are matriculating to, so that our college advisors see a greater than just initial data point of a student with a transcript or something like that. They get to see what work-based learning participation has happened, and what concurrent enrollment, and what the students' greatest barriers are to persisting, so that we can help each other as a K through life system, supporting our students' success at every step in any way. And so really building the community around our students has been a huge part of our NPSI work. And it's been interesting with implementation because everybody wants to participate, and I love that. So.
That's fantastic, Sam. Thank you. I love that K through life. Wrote that one down. That's great. And if any of you have questions for the very first NPSI network, please enter those in the chat. I think we have a couple questions that have come in from the chat box.
Yeah,
Is that right?
So yep, we have one follow-up question for you, Lalo, asking if you can share what the counselor outcomes are that you were talking about.
Absolutely. So they're not final. They're still kind of evolving. But what we're doing currently is taking. We have the Texas School Counseling Comprehensive Model, which has like 4 pillars that counselors focus on. Then we have a framework. These are all the typical legacy documents, artifacts that are like 200 pages long. Nobody reads them. So my colleague, Tiffany Vancer, who's the director for school counseling, and I kind of took those on, right? We read those, we tried to understand those, took me back to my PhD days, and now we're really trying to dig into those. And the idea is that we also looked at other outcomes. For example, NPSI has a set of indicators that they've said these are important. We looked at some documents that show principal counselor relationship and what are the things that counselors should be looking for. And so we're starting to land at some of these are truly post-secondary. So college going rates, FAFSA completion, right? We're not necessarily there at the college completion for counselors, but that's a data point we look at to inform our high schools and how we're doing. And then we also have the things that maybe are not directly under the advising and counseling umbrella, but that do lead to that. So graduation rates, and that's actually one of our 5-year goals as a district. That's one of our 10 big goals as a district, our graduation rates and dropout rates. And then some of the other ones feel a little bit more like input data rather than output. So AP potentials, how many are registering for AP courses, how many are registering for dual credit courses. We're looking at some of the items around like secondary persistence, grade to grade persistence. And so what we're really trying to do is not say there's these sort of, to Samantha's point, like let's not have data for days. Let's just look at these 7 or 8 and continuously look at those 7 or 8 to see where we are. And then the second challenge to that now, it has been for us, we actually adopted a new college and career planning platform this year, and it allows us to do what I call interoperability. For different users, regardless of who you are, you're a random teacher at a campus or assistant superintendent in the district, you can look at those same exact metrics for any school, any counselor caseload, and any subpopulation, which is the world we're really starting to get into. I call them constituencies. And so now I can say, let me look at the graduation persistence or the secondary persistence for my English learners, for my GT students, for my special education students, because that's how we start to see the gaps. We see that our kids from English learners and special education are less likely to enroll in post-secondary. So what do we do with those departments and those teams to get at that sort of metric? But those are some of the metrics that the registration to advanced courses, graduation rates, college enrollment, and that means college applications, FAFSA completion. That's not something that we necessarily adopted in that way before, but we're really trying to say, if we all just agree with this North Stars, then the work will follow in that direction.
And Lala, there's a couple of questions of people asking what platform did you adopt? Is there a specific platform?
Oh, the college and career planning platform we adopted is called Schoolings.
All right, so there's another question here.
Thanks for that.
Okay, I'll type that into the chat also. There's another question here, because you guys have all talked about data, and I know from NPSI, we share what are like where you start your thinking or what are the critical post-secondary metrics. But the question is, specifically for your districts, how did you determine what the right data was to focus on?
Well, it's an ever-evolving conversation. So like some have said already in this conversation, it's there's a lot of data out there, but what is good data? And it's going to change daily depending on what you're trying to accomplish. We just as much as yesterday, we're having a conversation about what's important for our counselors to be viewing as data, what's important for, as a district to be viewing, what's important and who has that access. So it's always changing, but there are some simple metrics and stuff that are very simple, behavior, grades, attendance, credits, FAFSA completion, those things like that. But it's that help move us in the right direction, but like I said, it's ever evolving.
I would agree with Aaron, and we're still discussing some of that because ours are also very focused on the career aspects of things, and that one has been trickier to track progress too in a universal way. So we've been using Salesforce, and we've got data tracked through our college platform, which is My Learning. And so how do you pull all of that data together too, to make it like a one-stop shop, so that when you walk into a school, you can say, here it is, your data, and they don't have to go hunting for it. So our data is very much, it's based off of research around creating pathways, creating momentum for a student's career, creating connections to colleges and majors. A data point we're working on is, we always have the persistence rates for college, but I want that broken down. Which colleges are keeping which students, so that we can do better advising, specifically for my students of color, my students in foster care, my students in transitional housing, because that data has a lot of power behind it. So, yeah.
Can I add something to what Sam said? I think Sam, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's something we're really pushing now is almost like when we started looking at ourselves in the mirror, we also realized, can we help our colleges start looking at themselves in the mirror? The persistence rates of some of our community colleges and universities in the area, I don't know that they're necessarily looking at it from how we would see it. And so we're also in those seats at the table, knowing that we're really owning college enrollment and college persistence as our work. And one of the things we really started to dig into is how do we inform ourselves back with satisfactory academic progress? So that, percentage of classes you need to meet, the 2.0 GPA, and really looking, and I think the superintendent mentioned this a little bit, really looking at what does that look like in English? So when they take English 1 or English 2 in college algebra, pre-calculus, some science courses, and that helps us inform back not just to our counselors about enrollment and persistence, but to our department chairs in English and math and science and social studies. Your AP English may be really prestigious in this high school, but those kiddos go on and do this well or not this well when they take English courses in college. And that's sort of the phase we're also getting into. And so I would encourage anybody who's listening, really think about what academic indicators from college can you use to inform your academic indicators in high school. Because persistence and enrollment are inherently about navigating the process. But passing an English class in college really tells you how you're doing for your English classes in high school.
I would just add one more piece, and I think that in terms of how you evaluate which data, we're as a central team, right, which clearly is to my earlier comments is just thinking about how to cut across and through so many schools and so many student needs. We have to think about where are the just total black holes for us. And I will say that during COVID, it really pushed our learning also around our students, the work of the summer after graduation, right? And all of the pieces that I think this whole group is very aware of in terms of the risks of summer melt. We had a lot of assumptions. We had a lot of national level data. We had a lot of reference points from research, but did we have a really, did we have a system that we were managing across all of our schools? And so we were able to launch a citywide college bridge program with our city university system. And through our data sharing agreement, I think that just being able to really hone in on the critical points in the matriculation process that were barriers, and some were like specifically COVID related barriers because of changes in campuses, processes and so many things needing to go online. And so I think from starting from a place of always kind of investigating in this current context and moment that we are trying to support students post-secondary planning right now, which, for us was this pandemic 2020, 2021, it's what are the black holes and how do we move as quickly to get some proxies or some insights there.
I just want to plug from the NPSI side that each, I don't think we don't have any of our data director representatives here from our districts, but each one of these districts have on their team for the NPSI network a data person, and that data strategist person is committed to tackling these questions. And so it's not obviously it's not an easy answer. You guys gave great answers, but it's different for each district, and what really needs to be there is that commitment. Which all of these guys have had, all of these districts have done. So we have one more follow-up question. I think it's for you, Sam. It says, what mechanisms are you using to share the ICANN plans with IHEs?
You're gonna be blown away by this one, but it's literally spreadsheet. Where we do VLOOKUPs and we identify the data that the college partners are interested. We're still developing this. We had tried it a while ago, but gave them so much information that colleges were overwhelmed by the data, didn't know what to do with it. So we're building better systems, but it is going to be old school style spreadsheets, high tech. So good question though.
All right, Venice, that was the last question in the chat.
Okay, I have one question for you guys. Just because, we do tackle real issues with you guys, when we're in these meetings, we are in the complete throes of, hey, we need help, what can we do? Could you guys talk about, what has been one challenge that you've uncovered or that you've overcome by implementing the NPSI model or interacting with the NPSI network?
I think for us, we've had a lot of systems in place for a long time, and it comes to some change management. That has been a struggle for us around helping people to think of the work differently, helping to engage across so many different teams and schools in a way that is seamless and feels helpful for schools. And so I think that is one of the things that we're still actively working on as a central team is who's working at what level with what data in what ways to impact students. So we're not duplicating efforts, but we're not missing any holes or anything.
Yeah, mine is very similar. Creating synergy has been something that we're starting to barely see some momentum on, and the momentum is really growing now. And creating synergy in the ways of looking at our outcomes rather than our inputs. So we talk a lot about inputs versus outputs in the work. And one of the examples I always give is we used to think about having 10 FAFSA workshops in October as success. And we started to slowly think about, well, do we really need 10 to get to our FAFSA completion rate? Maybe we don't even need workshops at all. Maybe they're daily long meetings we have with parents. And so a lot of that that was part of the challenge that we're starting to see shift over. And in that way, outputs has allowed us to create synergy. Now we're all looking at the same sort of goalpost at the end and walking in different ways at different paces, different routes, but getting there the same way.
Yeah, I would say with ours, it's partially getting the right people seated at the same table so that the conversation can be had and that we are doing the right things. So we struggle with data. I mean, it is Captain Obvious. It's written on our heads. We have data. What do you do with it? How does it look? Where is it? What system are we using for that data? And that's been a struggle. It's a mindset that we have to shift. And it's not just in one school, it's in all schools, and it's in our entire district, because when they're not accustomed to using data to drive what they're doing, it confuses them. And then so it's been one of those things where we are starting to have the conversations of what's important for each person so that we know what they have. And it's not, and as you guys have pushed a lot, is making sure that when that data is out there, we're not pointing the finger at anybody. It's a scary thought, but people immediately put their defenses up when they see data because you are directly attacking them, and that's not what it's supposed to be about, and that's not how we want it to be presented. So changing minds to move from when we present this data, it's not to blame you, it's so that we can work together for the ultimate goal of our students being successful to and through. So that's one of the big things.
I think in terms of challenges, there's something that Sam mentioned earlier, just around reorganizing her team, that I know resonates for my team here from the Office of Post-Secondary Readiness. We could not continue to approach our work in the same way. And we had to make some really deliberate decisions about how much of our capacity as a team was going towards policy and school support implementation, how much kind of human capacity we needed for our data and performance work. We had John Quintanilla, who is here in this call, who I shouted out in the chat, like we're kind of one person just managing a very hefty load of work, and that is not sustainable. So we had to make some shifts. We had to make shifts in somebody who's really tending to our communications across the system and coherence. So I think the mirror work that Lalo's mentioning, like, really forced us to recognize that some of the ways we were set up to work was not sustainable. And then I think we've all talked about like synergies, right? And getting the right people in the room through the structures of NPSI and just this kind of accountability. And I think that moving from a conversation of, yes, absolutely, we should be doing this together, to concretizing that synergy and starting to set goals and even across our 3 post-secondary readiness divisions, I had to check a lot of my assumptions about like what are the critical goals for the multilingual learners division and our special education office, and where is that not showing up in our work. And so we've done some really explicit mapping of the goals that we want to impact over the next couple of years. And I do also want to shout that out about the NPSI network. The fact that this is 2 years, you all didn't have a crystal ball about COVID, but just being able to think about the right now, but also think about next year, which will be so much about recovery, it's really helpful for us to kind of make sure that in the structure of our district post-secondary leadership team, we are really thinking about year over year, which may seem obvious to you all, but we are a school district that's under mayoral control. So in 10 months, we have a new mayor. So how does this work need to be kind of organized and supported and structured, in a way that we minimize impact on students and the services they receive as our city goes through kind of a mayoral transition and leadership transition.
That's great. Well, thank you all. As you all know, that this work is not easy, and it does not, you don't snap your fingers and it's done, right? We have to be in it for the long haul. The Fantastic 8, you guys have been troopers about making sure that we are increasing post-secondary outcomes for all students in your district. And that really does mean the world to us. So thank you for working with us, and we look forward to the next year and closing the first year out strong. All right, Kelly Sparks, I am going to turn it over to you for a couple of announcements that we have to make on the next.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to echo Venice's thanks. When you all the districts signed up or applied, I shouldn't say you signed up, when you applied, you actually went through the rigorous application process to be part of this. We asked for a commitment, but to be honest, we were blown away at the commitment of the districts, especially in the time of COVID, and everyone shows up to the meetings and everyone shows up to the conversation, and you guys make the time to do this work, and that is, it's what's needed, but it also is so appreciated on our end. That you guys are all there and you're ready to get to work and tackle the problems. I also want to thank the Kresge Foundation, who made this network possible. So we were able to launch this first network thanks to funding from Kresge, and to go for the 2 years. I also am excited to announce that built on this work, we are going to open up a new application period for a new network. For this one will be specifically for large urban districts. So we will be opening the application period on March 24th. You can go back to our website on the 24th to pull that down and see how you can apply. If you have questions or you're nervous, you want to make sure you're on the list to get the application, you can always email us at info@npsi.org. But we are excited to build on this work and start kind of building out the number of networks we can do. All right. Well, thank you all. And as always, we have been excited to engage you all in the conference this week. And we have two more things to close this out. So we'll have team time for your teams in about a half hour, I think. And then please join us at 2 o'clock Central Time for our closing session. We need to reflect and grow and think together, and it will be a good time. So please join us at 2 o'clock for our closing session.
Bye-bye.